William Blake once said, "It is easier to forgive an enemy than to forgive a friend." Keep this in mind as we discuss today Australia's betrayal of France when it comes down to nuclear submarine. And what does it mean for the future geopolitical landscape in Asia? My name is Dr. David Oualaalou.
And my name is Dr. Ross Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
David, I have a question for you.
Certainly.
You know, we have a goal of an X number of viewers that we want to subscribe.
What is that number?
70 million.
That's great.
Yeah. How are we doing on that?
Well, we're moving along. We are short 69,900,040.
Oh, we're getting there.
We're getting there. Hey, it's better. It's getting there, little by little. Little by little.
We'd like to thank you for watching and thank you for subscribing. If we're going to make the impact with good information that we want to make, we really require your cooperation in helping us get subscriptions. Thank you.
Well, indeed, Russ, on a serious note, we started it as a joke first, not anymore. We do want to reach that target number. It's because we want the message to be sort of shared with everybody around the world, because our survival depends on the peace that we could reach among all of us. And
Exactly.
That is the reason for it. So we take also this opportunity to thank our Patreon members for their continued support, and for you, if you like our videos and you want to show your support, consider subscribing to our Patreon membership. And to all of you, we say thank you for your continued support.
You know, the topics that we bring up, they're so serious, and it have to take a big step back to present objective information. Right now, we see that Australia has just agreed to the purchase of about 50 billion euros worth of submarines from the United States. What's your take on all this?
That is correct. The deal that just been struck between the United Kingdom, the US, and Australia for the United States and the UK to provide nuclear technology to Australia. And just for you to know, this just happened about a day ago. That's recent. Still the world reacting to this. And the reason being, there are twofolds. One of them has to do with France.
Oh boy.
And why France is in the picture is because France has already signed the deal. They had a deal with Australia regarding the building of the diesel submarines for about 50 billion euros. The second part to it is that the US came from behind and took away that deal from France and told the Aussies, "We'll provide you the nuclear technology." And the concern with that is, just for you to know, this nuclear technology, only 6 countries in the world will have that. And the countries are the US, Russia, the UK, France, China, and India.
And now there's going to be 7.
It's going to be, assuming everything works out, there's a lot of moving parts into this. Usually when you sell a technology like this, that comes with maintenance, comes with spare parts, it comes with, I've read in some analysis that we're looking at about 90 billion US dollars in this deal.
Oh, that's outrageous.
Well, it is when you consider the economy of Australia where it is today.
That has to be an enormous burden on the Australian people.
Well, exactly. It's because the ongoing tensions, which we are sure you are aware of, the current economic tensions with China, in which now China shut the door as far as economic trade on certain commodities, but that has hurt the economy, the Australian economy, big time, to the point that there's a recession on the horizon. Yet the government in Canberra is lying to Australians about how good is the economy, or how that the Australian economy will rebound in the next quarter, which is nothing but a lie.
Well, with the reduced trade with China, here's the backdrop.
Yeah.
29 years in a row, China's economy has grown. And lockstep with China, guess who else's economy has grown? Australia. Okay, now they're decoupling from China, and China's continuing to go forward, but Australia is now stuck, and it looks like they're headed for their first recession in 29 years.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Russ.
And so that economy is going to support $90 billion worth of defense spending. I mean, it just seems preposterous on the surface.
Exactly. And this is why this deal, this nuclear submarine deal, came at a worse time for Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you look at the country of Australia, now you're going to be dealing with two tracks. One track is economic. That has to do with where the economy is and where it's going.
Yeah.
And the other track is geopolitical. What does it mean now that Australia acquires the nuclear submarine technology? So for the economy aspects, on the economic aspects of it, you're looking at farmers and businesses are suffering. We had some sort of verified some information with some of our viewers inside Australia.
Yes.
And they are confirming that indeed farmers and businesses are suffering. And when the country, when the politicians rather in Australia, and by the way, we are not judging Australia here.
They get to decide what they want for themselves.
Yeah, and they're going to have to do that in 2022, which is only a few months from now.
Right.
They're going to have to decide. So it's up to the Aussies to decide what type of government they want. Do they want a government that is lying to them? Or do they want a government that can be held accountable if it didn't perform its duties as it should? So this is on the economic side, okay? Which is not a small matter.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. When you're talking of billions of dollars.
Yeah. And when China now has decided that there are certain commodities that they used to trade with Australia, no more.
Well, you know that the whole scene changed even to get worse just this week. Now China has declared Australia an adversary.
Yeah, that was because of this deal.
Because of the submarine deal.
This is now the geopolitical side of this argument, or this whole saga of what's going on in Australia. So the reason why it is problematic now is because once Australia acquired this technology, and by the way, just to make it clear, this does not mean that Australia now is going to become a nuclear power. No, Australia does not want to acquire nuclear weapons. This is nothing but a nuclear technology for the submarines, which basically, without going into more details into this, is the idea that a nuclear submarine can stay underwater for longer periods quietly undetected.
Stealth.
Exactly.
Stealth.
That's what it's going to be. But introducing something like this is going to change the dynamics for everybody now. And this is where the geopolitical calculations now are emerging as to how China is going to react, and how the regional country is going to react, how NATO is going to react, Europe, and so forth. It's no small matter.
Well, the Chinese are looking at the Australians directly in the eye and saying, you should be preparing for the worst. You're an adversary now. And
usually when you use the term adversary, that is a very strong word in international relations, usually. You don't use that term loosely. And when China said that, which, as a matter of fact, they just said it this morning,
yes.
As we found out, that's now, personally, and this is my opinion, it's really sending a message now. Gloves off. So now it's going to become the question of how China is going to react to this. Because mind you that this deal was exactly to counter China,
Absolutely.
Australia, the UK, and US were dancing around by not saying that. But you and I, Ross, all of us know what is the purpose of this deal. And it is exactly to counter China's growing influence. Okay. Now, there is one argument that can justify this action. And we're going to present that and let you decide. There are those who are arguing, some geopolitical analysts, arguing that usually because China has been growing so fast militarily, that's going to create a gap in that part of the world. Growing a gap can usually lead to some consequences. So you have to have a counter measure to that gap.
You think it might be another Cold War and military escalation in the part of China?
Well, this is where things look. This is where the things are looking. The direction they are taking. It looks like it's going into that direction, because what comes with that Cold War mindset is arms race. Because I guarantee you this, that while China has a nuclear submarine technology, I mean, they do have some, few submarines that can operate. Now China's going to be thinking in terms of, okay, is it time to arm the submarines with some serious missiles? We're talking ICBMs, we're talking about any other strong, powerful, weapons that you're looking at a distraction at 100%.
And if the Chinese don't have enough of them yet, we know how rapidly they can make them.
Yeah. And that is where the issue with this, now where things are going with this geopolitical, with this particular deal that will have a geopolitical ramifications. There is also another argument, and the argument has nothing to do with China. The argument has to do with France as a member of NATO. So the reason being is because France, as we said at the beginning of this show here, that they already inked the agreement with Australia. Australia agreed to a 50 billion euros regarding the deal.
It did it in 2009, is that correct?
Well, they started way back.
Way back.
Way back. They've been working on it.
And so they've had to ramp up at great cost to produce these things. And now, in one day, it was pulled out from the rug was pulled right out from under them, and they have to eat the cost.
Yeah. And now it's going to become the question of, is there another, what's the word I'm looking for?
Consequence?
Consequence, one, but also what's going to talk about, is that how an ally treats an ally?
Oh, yeah.
So, and that puts the credibility of the U.S. once again on the forefront, But this could lead to something far bigger than no one could anticipate. And it has to do with NATO. Because NATO wasn't even consulted on this.
And so the question is, what's going to happen in Europe armed forces? What's going to happen to NATO? Is there even a reason for NATO to continue to exist? And what are going to be the internal conflicts now that the United States has pulled the rug out from under France? There's a lot of questions that are to be raised here.
Yeah. Well, those are legitimate questions, Ross, that
Yeah.
a lot of analysts or observers of international affairs will be, contemplating or asking, because Europe is in a position now to make a decision, because it's been put into the position of, you look at, for example, with the Nord Stream 2.
Oh, yeah,
pipeline.
completed this week.
You look at the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Europe wasn't consulted on all that stuff, And now with this deal that the U.S. won behind France's back and pulled the contract from beneath the rug, that's going to now lead to the question: is it time to reconsider our alliance with the U.S.? Because I had a chance to talk to my family. I have some members of my family lives in France, and just ask the question, and they are livid. Even citizens that you would think will not know much about geopolitics, even this, they understand it.
They're angry.
And they are angry at the U.S. They don't understand why the U.S. will always have to do this. And if the U.S. consider itself the master of the world.
Well, I think that the United States is being unmasked.
Well, that is true. This is literally exposed the U.S. double standard and hypocrisy. I mean, let's just not sugarcoat it.
Right.
Let's call it what it is. You don't behave in this way towards an ally. I mean France in this case.
Right.
Yes, you can cut a deal with Australia, another one beside that one, but you don't do this kind of behavior. England is also to play a role into all this. Well, UK position is different because it's already exited it from the European Union. Yeah. So it becomes the question of, okay, are they allowed to do whatever? Well, the UK's economy is already going down too. So UK now is almost like the lost child in Europe.
Again.
Yeah. So that becomes the question of, okay, where this is going. And it is my belief that there will be serious even the head of the foreign affairs of the European Union was not even consulted. So that tells you right there, is the US acting unilaterally here? And for what?
That is the big question.
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah. And more on a serious note, it becomes the question of, countering China. To what degree?
And for what reason?
Yeah, because now it's going to become the question of a wrong miscalculation. It's going to lead to some serious consequences. Mind you that Australia is already a member of the Five Eyes. And just to let you know or provide you a brief history of what Five Eyes stands for. The Five Eyes, those are the joint countries. There are 5 countries that can share intelligence together. Usually this is started with the United States and the UK back in 1941 in a secret treaty between the two. But it entered into effect in 1946 when it became official. And by the time it entered, they invited 3 other countries. And the countries are Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. What's interesting about the Five Eyes is that those countries, each one of them is tasked with monitoring certain geographical areas of the world. And we're going to share with you as to where Australia fits into this. Well, Australia monitors South and East Asia. Okay? Canada monitors Russia, China, and Latin America. Okay? New Zealand is responsible for monitoring Southeast Asia and the Western Pacific. The UK monitors Europe, okay? European monitor Europe, European Russia, the Middle East, and Hong Kong.
It used to make sense.
Exactly. And the last one, the United States, monitors China, the Middle East, Africa, and the Caribbean. So, and just for you to know, this Five Eyes wasn't only limited to government operations. It extended to surveilling civilians, some high-profile individuals like John Lennon.
John Lennon?
Yes, John Lennon was monitored by the Five Eyes. Princess Diana was monitored. Charlie Chaplin was monitored. And even in the U.S., the actress Jane Fonda, because she was an activist,
Oh, yes.
she was monitored by the Five Eyes. So that tells you right there where, now we understand what Five Eyes is all about, but this deal between the US, UK, and Australia will only cement or increase instability in the region.
I got to read this quote to you from General Lloyd Austin. He's the U.S. Secretary of Defense. "We will remain clear-eyed of Beijing's efforts to undermine the established international order."
Yeah,
What they're doing is just the opposite.
exactly. Because this is not, as they claim, President of the US, the Prime Minister of UK, and Prime Minister of Australia. This is against what they claimed, that the project or the deal is to stabilize the region.
And what they're doing is unstabilizing it, destabilizing it.
It's going to become a very, very serious, what it's going to lead to. Now, it will be very interesting now to see how regional countries is going to react. We all know that ASEAN countries signed the treaty back in 1971 not to acquire nuclear weapon or technology.
And have made it very clear they want to stay neutral in this because for most of them, China is a major trading partner.
Exactly. So, and this is why so many are wondering, why Australia is going in this direction when they could address the economic issues that are now emerging to the surface, given the trade tensions with China and hurting the farmers and the businesses.
Until recently, the Chinese were willing to talk to them. Although now that they've become officially an adversary,
No,
that's
it.
questionable.
That's it. That door is shut.
Yeah.
That door is shut, Ross. I don't see now how China will even want to talk to them. As a matter of fact, even during President Biden's phone call with President Xi turned down an offer from President Biden to meet face to face.
That constitutes a major snub.
Yeah, it is not, but also a highlight to you the shift in geopolitical landscape.
Oh, does it ever?
That's a clear indication to why this is happening. Of course, it becomes the question of, is this deal truly intended for stability and security, or was it truly a distraction so the Australian people? There are so many directions you could look at this.
And what we see all over Southeast Asia is U.S. intervention to destabilize governments. Thailand is a perfect example.
Yeah, that's going to be now, as we said earlier, it's going to be very interesting now to see how Philippines is going to react.
Yes.
How Vietnam is going to react, Thailand, Myanmar, the ASEAN countries, including Singapore and Indonesia, Malaysia, and all those, because the U.S. presence is there. But will this encourage the U.S. now to allocate service members in that part of the world?
Well, we just got a bunch of them freed up from Afghanistan.
Yeah, but that's not a good sign, because China is going to look at that as really, you want to encircle China, and that's not going to settle well, knowing already the tensions regarding the Taiwan issue.
And chances are it's going to fail as well.
Yeah, I don't see the regional countries supporting the U.S. in this effort, because to them, that's a suicide.
Yeah.
To go with the U.S. in this on this trajectory, it just won't make any sense. They looked what just happened in Afghanistan. Because to them they will be like, what, we could be next. Because if, this is a big if, a military conflict erupts between China and the U.S., regarding one of those countries, they're not gonna, the U.S. might not get involved. If, for example, Taiwan gets involved.
I was just thinking of Taiwan.
Yeah.
And President Biden saying, we recognize one China. What signal is that really sending?
He did indeed. Into the phone call to President Xi, that was the first thing that came up in the conversation, based on what I found out, that indeed confirmed the one China policy. Maybe just to put that question to rest, that means we still can talk. But even with that, China didn't buy the arguments from the U.S. To sit down face to face in the upcoming G20 summits in Italy in October, which is only a few weeks from now. So, and to me personally, and this is my personal opinion, it's a clear indication that China would not bow to the U.S. no matter what.
That couldn't be more clear.
Yeah.
They're almost belligerent in terms of, they're standing very firm to the point of belligerence in terms of, no, you're not going to do it to us.
Exactly.
The age of humiliation is
gone.
over.
Is over. That's how I interpret this one too, because now China is in a position to say no if they choose, and they did right there to the U.S. president. Usually you will hear this stuff to a delegation,
Yeah.
but not to the president of the United States. Well, because also our credibility is shattered. We got no credibility left, And even for some of us in the U.S., when you mention that to them, they don't like to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, it's the truth. Because our foreign policy is so fragmented, is so ambiguous, we get no strategy, we get no objective whatsoever. What are we going sort of inciting tensions in that part of the world?
In hopes of containing China?
We won't be able to anyway. You can't contain one of the top largest economy in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense. And those war hawks in Washington that pushing for this agenda, they are putting us in danger. This is where the concern is. This is not about us, just the U.S. This is not about China. It's about our world. A conflict with China and on that magnitude will be wiped out on both ends.
And everyone in between.
Exactly. And that is the whole reason why we want to, sort of express the concern we have regarding this issue. It's not about one country here or the ego of another. This is about the survival of all of us, regardless where you're from. Doesn't matter. Because the miscalculation between the US and China or any other entity in that part of the world could trigger some consequences that it will be over, basically. That's all I can say to this. Because we are armed with some very devastating weapons to the point that destruction is a fait accompli.
And you have to ask, if so many people have their finger on the button that makes it happen, what is the likelihood of an error occurring? We have to consider that in terms of we need peace, not this kind of vulnerability to the whims of who knows who.
And usually in a setting like this, if an error happens, you can't press the pause button and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake.
It's done.
It's over. It's over because the other party is going to react, and they're going to react forcefully, distractively, and we all know where it's going to lead. It's going to become this tit for tat until it becomes to the point where is it time to use the nukes? And we all know the consequences of that.
Absolutely.
So let's hope it does not get to that. Let's hope. So that's usually where we see this is going on. And the deal in itself, it was in a bad timing. It was poor judgment on part of the US and UK, knowing that that technology is not shared with just, yes, Australia is part of the Five Eyes, but still, because the Saudis have asked for the same technology, and we're very wary about it. I mean, can you imagine?
With good reason.
Yeah, can you imagine the Saudis with the nuclear weapon?
I can.
Yeah, so it becomes very, very concerning, and now you are pushing, because you can be poking the bear to the point that, he ain't gonna take it anymore. So.
What would you say is the biggest takeaway for our viewers today?
Well, the whole idea of that now with this deal, you're looking at a major shift in the geopolitical landscape in that part of the world. That's going to be impacting not just China, not just Australia, but the whole region, if not the whole world. And we need to be aware of the consequences of our politicians' decisions that they make without our consent, in a way. Do I want to see where the world is headed with this kind of policies? No, I don't, because I know what the consequences would be. So,
would you say it's a fair takeaway to say that U.S. policy and U.S. policymakers are now being exposed?
Indeed, Ross, because they don't speak on my behalf. This is not something I will endorse, nor I will encourage, because I know what the other or the end of that's going to be, and that's not a scenario I'd like to entertain. So,
just as to conclude this, I had a conversation with a career officer from the Army on Saturday, and he said the rank and file in the military have lost faith in their leadership. Afghanistan was like the final nail in that coffin.
Yeah, and usually as a former military myself, that will be the first thing I will, If a commander couldn't perform according to his or her responsibilities, then you lose faith in that. And once you lose faith in the establishment, and you're done.
So I think the bottom line is policymakers are being exposed for what their true intent is. We'd like to thank you for watching. Please subscribe and,
as always, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.